Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining to another Friday Business Intelligence tip. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I have Friday technical snafus. That's the way it's been going today. So hopefully this session goes smoothly. Today, we're going to be talking about hierarchies in Power BI. Now, hierarchies are a way that you can look at data in a fashion that rolls up information from one item to the next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on over here to my other screen. Just give me a minute. And here we go. So what I've done is I've brought up Power BI Desktop. And in Power BI Desktop, I'm going to go ahead and create some things just from scratch so you can see what they are. Now, as I mentioned, hierarchies are a way that you can look at things like, well, the most common one is date information, where I can say I want to go from year to quarter to month to day. Or if I want to go from CEO to vice president, or product category to product subcategory, and so forth. You have, anytime you want to look at one piece of data and how it rolls down to another piece of data is how you would work with hierarchies. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect to a SQL Server database here. So rather than using a model that is predefined and everything there, you can see it completely from scratch. Now, there are three types of hierarchies that I'll go through. So this very first one, I'm just going to do an import on some data from a SQL Server database, and I'm not going to worry about the model that I'm creating. I'm just going to grab one table in here, and I'll go ahead and I'll grab a financial table, and I will do the invoices. So if you're familiar with invoice data, we will import our invoice data into Power BI. So as it's importing here, I'm going to go over to the right-hand side when it's done to the fields section. And what you're going to see is that Power BI, anytime you import data that's a date type, it automatically is going to create a hierarchy for us. So you may have seen this and just not realized it. But if I come down here, let's say to invoice date, you're going to notice this little calendar type item. And if I click the drop down, you're going to see a date hierarchy. Excuse me. And on that hierarchy, you're going to see the different levels of that. Now, how you use a hierarchy, if I go ahead and I grab a matrix view on my report, if I click the top of the hierarchy here on the fields, it's going to drop all the fields on here. And one of the things that the matrix visual does is it knows how to deal with the hierarchies already. So as you can see, it puts a little plus next to the year, and I can drill down to quarter, month, day, so forth. Now, some of the visuals, if I switch this one over to a table, won't really treat it like a hierarchy. It will grab all the fields like that, but it flattens them out. So just be aware of that. Depending on the visual, it's going to treat the hierarchy different. So in this particular case, I did a hierarchy that I didn't have to do anything for. Power BI, through its wisdom, did that. Now, keep in mind, for dates to show up this way in a hierarchy, you do have to import the data. If you're doing direct connect, which I do quite a bit, which I know a lot of you Power BI purists out there don't like direct connect, but if I do direct connect, it won't automatically create the date hierarchies. I have to build those, which brings me to my next topic. If I wanted a different type of hierarchy, how do I do that? So I'm going to go ahead and do a new Power BI session here. So without getting rid of the other one, I'm just going to open up a whole nother Power BI session, and we'll create data that way. This time I'm going to say I want to get data. And on this one, I'm going to not import it when it comes up. I'm going to pick a table and just do direct connect. You don't have to do it this way, but I just wanted to show you as pure a way without any modeling noise getting in the way at all. So if I select SQL Server, and here again, I put in my laptop. And in this case, I'm going to do a direct query. And on that direct query, I'm going to grab a table. This time I'm going to grab a table called the chart of accounts. So those of you that are accounting folks and understand a little bit of accounting, the chart of accounts is a way that you list all of your different accounts in your organization. So if I pick chart of accounts and say load, what that's going to do is bring up the field list on the chart of accounts over on the right. In a second here, once it grabs all the schema information about the table, it'll bring that in. And if I expand this out, if I look at my chart of accounts, it's got all kinds of information here. But you'll notice I have levels. Now, at the beginning of this session, I said there's 3 types of hierarchies. The first type I showed you, and that was Power BI created hierarchies. Dates are an example of those. The second type is what I call a visual hierarchy. And what that is if I go ahead and I put a matrix on here, if I take the chart level 1 name and I add that to the rows, and I take chart level 2 name and I add that to the rows, and a chart level 3 name and I add that to the rows, it has a hierarchy that's in here. And what this is the reason I call this a visual hierarchy is I'm creating it specifically for this visual that I put in here manually. So me as a Power BI user have selected different items and I put it in order on the rows. And that gives me this drop down area that's here. So it's good for the life of this individual visual. It's not shared anywhere else. Another type of hierarchy that you can use rather than a visual hierarchy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take these off of here right now so that I don't have them on here. So we have our matrix out here with nothing on it. Is on any one of these items, you'll want to go to the top level that you want in your data elements to be the top level of your hierarchy. And if you right click on that, you'll find an option for create hierarchy. So I'm going to say create hierarchy, and it's going to create a hierarchy that's named the name of that plus the word hierarchy. And you'll notice it gives it a little icon next to it with a tree-like looking thing. Now, what I like to do is I like to rename this hierarchy so it's not quite so ugly, and I'll just call it account hierarchy. We'll call it something like that. You can call it whatever you want, but I usually clean up the name a little bit. I just wanted to show you do that just by right-clicking and saying rename. And if I do the little expand next to it, you'll see it's got my chart level 1 in there. Now, to add levels below that, what you do is you just find the next item that you'd like chart level 2 name, and I say I want to add that to my hierarchy, and I pick the hierarchy that I'm adding it to. I'll add that to my account hierarchy. Chart level 3 name, I'll add that to my hierarchy, and I'll add that to my account hierarchy. And then maybe I want the actual account description itself at the bottom of that. So I can add that to my hierarchy. That's the account hierarchy. So now my account hierarchy has those in there. Now the difference here is I can click on this hierarchy to add it to my item, and it automatically grabs all those levels in here. The other advantage is this is defined in my data set, so I can use this across many visuals at once without having to go through manually undoing it. So there's my assets, my current assets, my cash, down to the individual item. So it allows me to use that hierarchy that way. If I use it on a little bit different type of a visual, why don't I go ahead and I'll add we'll add a bar chart here. I think this one here is a good one that I can use with it. If I bring that over in here, I need to add an amount in here, and I don't have a fact, so ignore that. We'll just do the matrices with the hierarchy that way. So it allows me to pick that hierarchy and drop that in there that way, navigate up and down. So if you wanted to do other things, some of the other visuals require a fact or a measure number. So if I wanted to drill on a chart, but the beauty of these is it automatically understands that drill path that you're going down, up and down the chain. So there were the predefined hierarchies that came from Power BI, dates. There were the ones that were visual specific, where I manually just did each row and nested them. or there's the model-specific defined hierarchies, which is a better idea to build as many of those as possible for the users so that they can use them across visuals and they don't have to know as much about the data models. So hopefully you found that hierarchies are going to be a useful tool that you can use in Power BI. We're going to see more of those. Now keep in mind that there are some advanced things that come into play. What I showed you assumed what's called a hierarchy that is non-ragged, meaning all the levels kind of roll up to each other. I think I have some examples actually. Let me go into like other assets. Yeah, see, other assets is blank, and then there's items. So if you have accounts, for instance, that are only at level 2 and the summary levels are hidden, then you'll get blanks in there. Now, the way you get around that is using DAX formulas. We can go through that in a future session as far as how to dynamically hide these levels based on information that's there. But assuming a perfect world of things that roll up and down, categories, subcategories, things like that, these hierarchies are as simple as just right-click, create hierarchy, and add them in that way. So hopefully you found today's session useful. And always, if you do have any suggestions for future, please feel free to email them to us at info@dashboardgear.com, and we'll talk again next week. Talk to you then.